Good morning, everyone. This video is going to go through the 5A2 passage, the Sempronia passage, and also through the worksheet that you did over the weekend. So beginning with 5A2, we have, at that time, Catiline is said to have joined very many men to himself, also several women, who had borne huge expenses at first by means of prostitution. Afterward, when, on account of their age, they were not able to make a living in this way, they had fallen into greatest debt. Therefore, they joined themselves to Catiline so that they might free themselves from debt, and Catiline, happy, received them into the conspiracy so that through them he might stir up the slaves of the city and he might burn the city. He was thinking that he either would join the husbands of these women to himself, or he would kill them. But among these was Sempronia, who had committed many deeds, often of manly audacity. This woman was fortunate enough in birth and beauty, furthermore in a husband and in children. Learned in Latin letters and Greek letters, more learned in singing and dancing than it is necessary for a matron. But to her, all things always were more dear than honor and chastity. Thus, her passion having been aroused, so that more often she was seeking men than she was being sought. Truly, the talent of this woman was hardly absurd. She was able to make verses, she was able to move jokes, to use conversation either moderate or gentle or provocative. In a word, there were many wits, or much wit, and much charm present in her. Okay, so that's how the passage goes. It is fairly tricky Latin. Sallust is not an easy author, a little bit different than what we've seen from Cicero so far. So if you had trouble with it, don't be worried, that's pretty normal. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go through the worksheet. Okay, first question, why is eo tempora ablative? Hopefully this is a pretty easy question because tempora literally means time, and it is in fact an ablative of time, at that time. Next we have, who is the subject of dicitur? So you go through the first line of Latin, you look for a nominative. The only nominative in here is Catiline, Catilina. He is a first declension masculine noun. So Catiline is your subject of dicitur. Catiline is said to have, and then the rest of the sentence. All right, what person, number, tense, voice, and mood is dicitur? So it's third person singular. You have that tur ending, tur. It is present tense, dici. Voice is passive, he is said, and mood is indicative. What is the direct object of facere? Let's see, in line 24. Okay, so in line 24, you have when, on account of their age, the women were not able, non possent, facere, to make, and then the other word you have in that sentence is quaestum, and quaestum is your accusative direct object. They were not able to make a living, which is what quaestum means. Okay, what type of subjunctive clause is ut liberarent? So, kind of skim down, get to igitur se Catilinae adjunxerunt ut se aere alieno liberarent. So therefore, they joined themselves to Catiline, adjunxerunt se Catilinae, ut liberarent. So you have to look for some clues. is there an indirect command? Well, joining yourself to someone doesn't seem like a word of commanding. You're not asking or begging or requesting. It's probably not indirect command. If it was a result clause, it would have some form of tom or tot or tantis or adeo, seek, something setting up a result. It was so great that this happened, or there were so many people that this happened, but we don't have anything like that. So probably if you don't have either of those and you have an ut, liberarent, it's just a purpose clause. They joined themselves for the purpose of freeing themselves from debt. And that makes sense in context as well. So purpose clause, that would be B. Next we have why is ire alieno ablative in line 25. So we have se ire alieno liberarent, so that they free themselves, and you free yourself from something, you separate yourself off from it. So it's an ablative of separation. There's no prepositional phrase here. You don't have an in or an ex or an ob, so not prepositional phrase. And also it can't be an agent because, first of all, not a person. Second of all, there's no a or ob, so it has to be separation out of those three options. Even if you didn't know, you could kind of rule out the other two. Okay. What type of subjunctive clause is ut solicitaret incenderet? So we skim down. And this one should be pretty straightforward because you have Catalinae litus accepit. So Catiline, happy, received. Sorry, this is a trick one. So, right, it's not acadit, even though it looks very similar. So I gave you that hint because I knew it might trick you up because it tripped me up multiple times. So Catiline received those women into his conspiracy. And then we have a ut solicitaret atque incenderet. So that he might stir up the urban slaves and burn the city. So again, we have to look around for some clues. First, we look for an indirect command, but receiving someone to yourself, not a verb of commanding. Again, we look for tantus, tam, tot for a result clause. None of those are present here. So the only other option is purpose clause. Again, if it was acadit, it would be an acadit ut, but it is in fact acapit, not that. So your option here is, again, it's a purpose clause. He received them to himself in order that he might stir up the slaves and burn the city. Okay, moving on, we have what adjective is agreeing with facinora at the top of the next page. So you look around, you have quae multa saepe virilis audaciae facinora commiserat. So Sempronia, who, quae commiserat, had committed, and then multa saepe virilis audacia facinora. So facinora has to be our direct object here because she is committing something, and that something is the facinora, the deeds, or crimes perhaps. So facinora, neuter, plural, accusative. So you have to look at what else could be neuter, plural, accusative. Virilis audaciae, neither of those are neuter, plural, accusative. So you go back a little bit further and you get to multa. And multa is neuter, plural, accusative, or it could be, and it is here. So those two words are agreeing, and therefore the adjective is multa. All right, so scrolling down here. What gender, number, and case is facinora? Neuter, plural, accusative, as we have discussed. All right, what person, number, tense, voice, and mood is commiserat? So here we look at our ending, erat. T is third person singular, as you know, OST. So third person singular. Tense, you see that erat ending and the fact that it's from the third principal part, commisi. So third principal part plus an erat ending must be pluperfect. She had committed. And the voice is active because it's from the third principal part instead of the fourth principal part. And then last but not least, it is indicative. not subjunctive. If it was subjunctive, it would be kamisiset with that issa in the middle, but it's not, just indicative. Okay? Scrolling on down, we have what gender, number, and case is cantu? Very good question. So in line 31, we have cantu et saltatione. So even if you didn't know what it was, you could kind of tell from context because we have docta in litteris, so she's learned in letters. Then we have magis docta, more learned, in cantu et saltatione. So it's definitely ablative, just from context. But even if you didn't know that, you could look up what declension cantu comes from, and it's cantus, fourth declension. So if you have a long U in the fourth declension, it must be ablative singular. And then you can just look up the gender, and you see that it is masculine, as most fourth declension nouns are. So ablative singular masculine for cantu. All right. Next we have gender, number, case, tense, and voice of akensa. As some of you pointed out, your book does say akensa is an adjective, but it is actually a participle. It comes from akendo, and this is the fourth principal part. So we have, if nothing else, the adjective ending you could figure out. So it agrees with libido, so it is feminine, it is singular, and it is nominative. So even if you couldn't figure out what kind of participle it was, you could figure out feminine, singular, nominative. And then to go a step further, it's from the fourth principal part, so it must be the perfect passive participle. So it's perfect passive, having been burned or having been inflamed is where that comes from akendo. Okay. So next we have what type of subjunctive clause is ut, pateret et pateritur, or quam pateritur. So you look at the first part of the sentence, so you have libido sic akensa, and you may note to yourself, there's no verb. You are correct. There's just an est missing, so, or maybe a fuit. It was inflamed, but don't worry too much about that. The important part here is the sic, because if you have a result clause, you have tantos, tam, tot, adeo, or sic is your other option to set up a result clause, and that's what's going on here. So you definitely don't have a verb of commanding, and you don't have an accidit or perficio, so sic is the thing that lets you know what type of subjunctive clause it is. So it was inflamed in such a way that it results. She more often was seeking men than being sought. So here it is a result clause. As I said in the hint, note the sic, very important. Okay, what is the case and number of the pronoun eius in line 34? So, ingenium eius haud absurdum. So if you look at your chart of is ea id, you can find that eius is the genitive singular for every gender. So at least you would know it's genitive singular even if you can't figure out the gender right away. So once you figured out it is genitive singular, the talent of that one, unclear what gender it is, you can tell from context what gender it is. So we've been talking about sempronia in this whole paragraph, and again here we are talking about her talent specifically. So the ingenium of her. So it is feminine genitive singular as opposed to neuter or masculine if it's talking about a different subject. All right, what is the person, number, tense, voice, and mood of pateret? So I have already told you it is subjunctive because it's in a subjunctive clause, so you can just put that right up there. Then you have to figure out what person and number it is. So it has that T at the end, that OST, third person singular again, and the tense is imperfect here because you have petera, which is that infinitive form, and then a finite ending. So if you have a present infinitive form plus a finite ending, it must be the imperfect subjunctive. So third person singular, imperfect subjunctive, and here it is active. You have a T as opposed to a tour, which is the passive ending. So once you've figured that all out, hopefully the next one is very easy. What is the person, number, tense, voice, and mood of peterator? Just the exact same thing, only now it is passive. So it is third person singular, tour. It is imperfect subjunctive, petera, and then your ending. And the voice here is passive instead of active. So she either was seeking peteret or she was being sought, peterator. All right, next we go on to what is the gender, number, and case of Worksheet. And I give you a hint that it is the fourth declension, just like cantu. So, in line 35, we have facera Worksheet. So, in the fourth declension, you have a couple different options for that long US ending, so you have to read the sentence and determine from context what case it is. So, passa Worksheet facera. She was able to make Worksheet, or verses. So it must be the accusative plural here, because that's the only option that makes sense. Genitive doesn't make sense. Nominative doesn't make sense because she is the subject, so it must be accusative plural. So once you know it's accusative plural, all you have to do is look it up to find the gender. Again, most fourth declension nouns are masculine, and this one is too. So fourth declension, masculine, accusative plural. All right, and last but not least, what form is uti from utor? So line 35, we have a bunch of infinitives in a row, which hopefully helps you. And then you get to uti. So you have fakra, moera, uti. So hopefully that kind of keyed you in. If it didn't, there are ways to figure out that it is an infinitive. So if you look up utor, you would find the first form is utor, present, singular, first person. The second form is uti, so you know that must be the infinitive. But if you want to rule out some of the other options here, you could kind of go through the list. So present, deponent, infinitive. That is actually what uti is, so we'll leave that one for now. Perfect, active, first person, singular, indicative. It looks tempting because you know there's a long I in the first person singular perfect active. But utor is deponent, so it wouldn't look like that form. If you had the perfect first person singular indicative active of utor, you would have usus est, or usa est, usum est, something like that, because it is the deponent verb. Next, we have the perfect passive participle, masculine plural. Again, that would have a long I at the end, but the participle form of utor is usus, as I just mentioned, so you'd have usi with a long I, not uti with a long I. All right? Okay, and lastly, the singular imperative. If you had a active verb, not a deponent verb, you might have an I at the end. For instance, if you have audio, the singular imperative is audi. So that looks tempting again, but because utor is deponent, you'd have something like utera. Remember, in the singular imperative deponent, you get that re that looks kind of like the infinitive of other verbs but isn't. So we know it's not the singular imperative. Okay, so hopefully all of that helped you work through the worksheet, read through the passage. If you have any questions, again, please let me know. I'll be happy to help. Have a great Thursday, and I will see you all later.